You can't handle the responsibility, my CEO said when I told him I was pregnant, and I remember the way he said it. Calmly, almost kindly, as if he were doing me a favor by explaining why the promotion I had spent 5 years earning was suddenly going to someone else. I sat across from him in his glass office overlooking downtown Seattle, one hand resting unconsciously over my stomach. I haven't said I can't handle it, I replied. He leaned back. You're going to have a baby. Your priorities will change. There was not a question about my performance. Not a discussion about my results. A conclusion. My pregnancy had become the evidence against me. I walked out carrying the folder for the vice president position I had been promised only weeks earlier. Outside, rain streaked the windows, turning the city into a blur of gray lights. I stopped in the elevator and stared at my reflection. I looked exactly the same. Same navy blazer. Same tired eyes. Same woman who had led 3 successful product launches and increased our division's revenue by 28%. Only one thing had changed. Someone else now believed my future belonged to my baby instead of me. That night, I sat at my kitchen table in our quiet suburban neighborhood, drinking decaf coffee while my husband watched late-night television in the next room. At 3 a.m. I was still awake. The house was silent. I opened the refrigerator and its pale light spilled across the kitchen floor. I stood there for a long time thinking about the sentence. You can't handle the responsibility. I couldn't stop hearing it. I had heard something similar once before. 2 years earlier, during a board preparation meeting, my CEO had told me, "You're the person I trust when everything is on fire." I remembered smiling. I had worked through weekends. I had flown to New York on 6 hours' notice. I had taken conference calls from airport lounges and once presented quarterly numbers while sitting beside my mother in a hospital waiting room. Nobody had ever questioned whether I could handle responsibility then. Apparently, motherhood was different. The following Monday, I asked HR for the criteria used to select the new vice president. The HR director smiled carefully. It's a business decision. Of course, I said. Can I see the performance metrics? She hesitated. Those aren't generally shared. That answer stayed with me. So I started looking at my own records. Performance reviews. Emails. Quarterly reports. Client satisfaction scores. Revenue numbers. Every award. Every thank you message from senior executives. I made copies of everything. Not because I planned to sue. Not yet. I just wanted to know whether I was imagining what had happened. Then I found an email that changed everything. It had been accidentally forwarded to me from an executive assistant. The subject line read, "Leadership Transition." Inside was a conversation between my CEO and the executive who eventually received the promotion. My CEO had written, "She'll be taking maternity leave soon. We can't put the division through that disruption." The other executive replied, "Agreed. Better to move forward with someone who will be fully available." I stared at the screen. My hands started shaking. There was not an interpretation, not a feeling. Words. Time-stamped words. I printed the email. Then another message appeared. This one was from my CEO to HR. Please document concerns regarding her long-term availability. Long-term availability. I whispered the phrase aloud. My husband came into the kitchen. What happened? I handed him the papers. He read them silently. Then he looked at me. You should talk to a lawyer. I didn't want to. Lawyers meant conflict. Conflict meant uncertainty. And I was already carrying enough uncertainty for 2 people. But the next morning my CEO called me into another meeting. He congratulated me on the opportunity to focus on my family. I looked at him. What opportunity? He blinked. Your maternity leave. You're describing maternity leave as though it's a career opportunity. His jaw tightened. You're taking this personally. I almost laughed. My career is personal. He looked away. That was the moment something inside me became very quiet. I stopped trying to convince him. Instead, I hired an attorney. The months that followed were exhausting. There were interviews, document requests, phone calls, meetings in small offices where I sat under fluorescent lights answering questions about things I had never imagined I would need to prove. My lawyer kept asking the same thing. What happened next? So I told her. I told her about the promotion, the comments, the emails, the sudden changes in my responsibilities, the meetings I was removed from. The client accounts quietly reassigned. And then came the strangest part. During discovery, we found an internal spreadsheet ranking potential successors for senior leadership. My name was at the top. Not second. Not third. First. Beside my name were performance scores higher than everyone else's. Then, under a separate column labeled Concerns, someone had typed Pregnancy/maternity leave. I remember staring at that spreadsheet in my lawyer's office. My throat tightened. All those numbers. All those achievements. Reduced to one word. Pregnancy. The case eventually became larger than my own position. Other women inside the company began contacting investigators. One former employee said she had been passed over after announcing her pregnancy. Another said her leadership responsibilities had been reduced after returning from maternity leave. A third had been told during an interview that the company preferred candidates without family distractions. Suddenly, my story wasn't sitting alone in a file. There were others. The company fought hard. Their attorneys argued that the promotion decision had been based on business continuity. But the emails told a different story. So did the performance records. So did the spreadsheet. And when the settlement was finally announced, I was sitting at home with my newborn daughter asleep against my chest. My husband read the news from his phone. The company had agreed to pay one of the largest pregnancy discrimination penalties in its history. I didn't celebrate. I just looked down at my daughter. Her tiny fingers were curled around mine. For months, I had imagined that winning would feel like fireworks. Instead, it felt like silence. The deepest kind. The kind that comes when something you've carried for too long is finally set down. Years later, I still think about that night. My daughter is old enough now to ask questions. Sometimes we walk past the little league field near our neighborhood and she runs ahead, laughing while parents cheer from the bleachers. Sometimes I watch her and remember that scared woman standing alone in a refrigerator's cold light at 3 a.m. I thought I was fighting because I wanted my old career back. I wasn't. I was fighting because someone had tried to decide what I was capable of before I had the chance to decide it for myself. That distinction changed everything. The company had looked at my pregnancy and seen a limitation. I looked at my daughter and saw another reason to stand taller. One morning, years after the case ended, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee while sunlight came through the windows. My daughter ran into the room carrying her backpack. "Mom, we're late." I laughed and stood up. For a second, I remembered the glass office, the rain, and those words. "You can't handle the responsibility." I picked up my keys. Maybe I had never needed to prove that I could handle responsibility. I had needed to learn that I didn't have to accept someone else's definition of my limits. Outside, the morning was bright. My daughter grabbed my hand. And together we stepped into the new day. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that no one else gets to decide what you're capable of, please like this video and subscribe for more powerful stories. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Your support, your time, and every subscription truly mean more than you know.